Okay, right. Um, so, I was reading the internet and something sort of irked me a little bit, and I thought I'd try to explain it. The reason it was on Mastodon, and the reason I didn't engage is because I don't want to get into arguments about stuff in limited character posts. It's get too much like Twitter in that way. So I am going to explain it in more detail in this presentation. So I called it Thoughts About forEach. Very boring title. I'm Andrew Eads. I'm a programmer. I've been programming for decades. Currently a CTO, been technical director, lead programmer, you name it. I've been there all my life. So that's my appeal from authority. I'm a big fan of Swift, and I am very keen on the functional programming aspects of it. So I did get annoyed about the post I'm about to show. So someone on the internet was wrong. So they said forEach has one useful purpose. It's a honeypot, a marker for functional cargo cultists. If someone pushes back on your flagging it in a PR review because it's Swifty, in quotes, it's a sign you need to give their code extra scrutiny. There'll be some accidentally quadratic use of reduce in there. Whoa, they sound like they know what they're talking about. Quadratic? Woo, I don't even know what that means, eh? So, but then they go on to show an example of why forEach is bad. But this is part 2 of the thing about that. But essentially it says they were complaining that the use of, I wish I had a pointer, but imagine I do, the use of return here is confusing because what it would do in a for in loop, you'd use continue to continue the loop, but because forEach takes a closure, return actually continues the loop, and that was kind of their point. But to me, like what was glaringly, as they say it here, that return is effectively a continue. Fair enough, understood. Confusion between return and continue. But my point, my sort of spidey senses go tingling. Go, why the hell would you use a continue? There's something wrong here. Now, the thing that's wrong is what have we got? Yeah. Well, actually, let me show you some code. So, I've just done some. So this is essentially I've built this in nice little Swift app. So they had this account with an active boolean. I've put in a data structure because obviously it'd be pointless not having anything. And they had a refresh method. So I imagine they meant to have like a list of accounts or an array of accounts. So I've just made one and I've randomly put true and false in. So this is the example they give, which is terrible. But that's off of their tweet post or whatever you call it, toot. And this is their suggested solution. Also terrible. I mean, yeah, they've changed accounts.forH into for accounting accounts. Actually, I just cut and paste this. This actually needs to be a continue. Okay, so that was their main point. Is like, well, continue means continue the loop, yeah, and return here means continue the loop. So, gosh, that's confusing. But this is nonsense code. I mean, the problem is not whether you use for accounting accounts or accounts.forEach. I honestly don't see that much of a problem with using either. I think whichever suits in the circumstances. Frankly, I don't like these kind of doctrinaire rules that people love to have, and I certainly don't think that your code necessarily needs extra scrutiny because you use a forEach. I think that's nonsense. But someone else suggested in the same thread, I think this is somewhat improved. So you actually check the active thing in the for. This is a really nice construct of the for in, but no one knows it. so kind of useless. But for me, the better way, I think the clearer way, is the functional way. You first filter your accounts to the active ones, and then you loop through them and refresh them. So that to me is clearer. There's 2 steps, and this is the correct way. However you do it, you need to be doing filtering and then forEach, or filtering and looping. And you can do the same with, you can create the, looped. We can create an active accounts like this, and then do your for like this. Oh, actually, Xcode can actually help sometimes. So let's get rid of that. Account.refresh. So you can do that too, right? The important thing for me is we've done this filter outside the loop, not inside the loop. So the sort of that's what really cried out for me when I saw this on the Mastodon. It's like, this is such a bad example, because it's already really bad code. So if you're looking at a code review, which is apparently they are, then the thing I'd be picking out is like, what the hell are you doing in this loop? Why are you, either put something in the collection that you want to loop over, or decide before you loop over it, not inside the loop. That's just really bad for branching, cache missing. Everything is wrong about that. It's really hard to understand that you have to go right, and it's simple just to make the correct collection that you want to iterate over before you start the iteration, and that's really what this is about. So here it is again. For account, that shouldn't be return, that should be continue. But whenever you see this, it's for guard or for if. Whenever you see that pattern, you've got a filter, and that is how you recognize this. If you're immediately deciding whether you should actually be, this thing should be in the loop, then that's really a filter. So I've got some. Go back to Xcode. How would you? So here's the data-driven approach, right? The real approach is like, why are we keeping? This is really bad, right? And I do say things that are really bad. You can challenge me if you like, but we shouldn't be having a flag inside an account if it's active or not. Or maybe we can, but it shouldn't be the primary. That shouldn't be it. What we really want to do is make 2 separate lists, one of active accounts and one of inactive accounts. So this is how that would happen. You remove the bit of data. So wow, you've all of a sudden you've saved space. Like, I don't like to talk about optimization because I think people use that as a stick to beat you with. Optimize after you've got got things right. But you've removed some data, so now all of a sudden your account data has got I know it's only a Boolean flag, but usually they are padded and they will take up a reasonable amount of space. You've just removed that completely. You don't need it. Never needed it. And you just, instead of one list of accounts, you have 2. You have your active accounts and your inactive accounts. And instead of flipping the Boolean flag, you just move it from one list to the other. So if you have an inactive, and if it's inactive because it's in this list, so you can say, you can check the inactive accounts contains this account, or vice versa, active accounts. There is a potential here error that you can have it in both, but you can you can actually build a collection around that and hide this as private implementation details, and actually really make it much more robust. But we can leave that for the viewer to try. And then you just process, and you can do it like this with the forEach, or you can do it with the forIn. It doesn't really matter. It's up to your own personal choice, or but the reason not to use a forEach is not because it makes things simpler. And this is, for me, this is very readable and easy to understand. But I understand that some people love to use the forIn structure, so fair enough. But the main point is we are allowing ourselves to decide whether an account is active or inactive at another point in the program. Could be because presumably accounts don't flip between inactive and active states all the continuously. There is some kind of it happens occasionally. So occasionally you update these lists. So instead of like checking every time you process the accounts, that should be accounts. Right. Instead of checking inside the loop for every single iteration, you only flip the bit, as it were, by moving it from inactive to active once every now and again. Once when that actually happens. So that shouldn't be inside your main processing loop, because that's a waste of time. You should know what accounts are active before you start going through them. It's just really good design principle to kind of try to hold on to. So that is my will actually. So the real problem is the conditional code, right? Get rid of conditional code. If you see conditional code, then delete it. It's the root of all evil. Someone said the root of all evil is premature optimization. It's not. The root of all evil, every single bug will be within an if, pretty much. 95%, maybe even more, will be about some piece of state not being correct and a condition not figuring it out. And the more conditional code you have, the more conditional code inside loops you have, the worse your performance is, the harder it is to understand, and it's harder to debug, because instead of like going through a list of all active things, you're going through a list of all the things, and then you're having to like look at, is it active? Oh, I don't know. Oh yeah, it is active. Oh, I shouldn't be. It's just pointless to be doing it in that order, and it's not harder to do it in the correct order. So yeah, one more look at data-driven design. So what I've done is I've changed the data just to be an int. I've initialized each account with some data. It's a total hack here, really. I'm just gonna, in this hello world content view, I'm just gonna spin up a task when we first construct the view, and that's going to create a program and just call process accounts on it. And the process, I've changed the refresh to print the data, and as you can see, we've got 1, 2, 4, 6, 8, which is all the true values. So that's working. And I should write some tests, but we're not going to go there yet. So what I want to show is really how to convert this into something a bit nicer, in my view. So what we're going to do is, first of all, we remove the boolean, and of course that's going to give us a load of build errors. So we need to add into our account some static active accounts, which is going to be an array of account, and that's going to be honest, we're probably going to use a set, just because that is really what we want. We don't want duplicates, so let's just make that a set. and of course it's going to be empty, and we need some inactive accounts as well. And we actually want these to be private, but we want to be able to set them. Not that set, the other set. So this is going to be a hidden implementation. Okay, we can't. Account now needs to be hashable. And so we can go into a set. Okay, we need to write a constructor for it. Going to make a default constructor, which data equals 0, say, not data. Okay, but we're going to make that private, so we never call that. And then we're going to make an actual constructor that we're going to use, which takes an active flag and some data, which is just an int, and then we're going to obviously just, well, now we don't have an active flag in this, so actually what we're going to do is we're going to we're going to, if the active flag is true, then it should go in this active account set. So I am going to use an if, but I'm just so we can go if active. I'm going to add this account to the. We're going to take a private in here. Let's just do that. So sorry, I'm jumping around too much. I haven't really thought this through. I'm just doing this on the fly, so who knows how long this will take me to get it to work. But here we go. So we've got an active. We know where should be in the active. So we're going to take the cells, active accounts, and we're going to insert a new account with the data, and it's as simple as that. Otherwise, we're going to take the self inactive accounts. I'm going to remove no, we're not. We're going to insert. So we're going to insert our account. Now, I'm not doing a coding class here, but because I've got repeated code here, I'm gonna move that out because I don't like to have to repeat myself. Okay, so we've creating the account using the private initializer, and we're just deciding to put it in active or inactive. So that means that these now work. Of course, we don't have an active flag anymore, but using a computed property, we can actually give that same API, and it's active if we do a getter. So it's active if it's in the active accounts. So we just return self active accounts contains self. So that's how we tell if it's active. And to set something, now we basically going to kind of mirror this. Well, what you have to do is, first of all, the new value is whether it's active or not. So if new value, so we're setting it to active, so it must be in the inactive accounts. So we're going to remove it from inactive accounts. Else we're going to remove it from active accounts. Right? And then after we've done the remove, we put it into the other set. So here we just self inactive. So that's just kept. So that should mean that this now compiles. Returning without. Right. I think I just have to actually do this. I've been programming in a lot of different languages recently, so my Swift is actually a bit rusty, it turns out. Right, so basically, to give us a Boolean active or not, we're just testing if it's in the active accounts, and then we're just swapping whether it's in inactive or active when we set the value. That's it. That gives us the same API. I think if we run it, 12468, which, if we just check that, is the correct sequence. Interestingly, even though it's gone through yeah. So that's it. You know, we've got an array of accounts. Yes, getting myself confused. Yeah, but we can. So let's get rid of these other examples. Okay. But instead of testing this flag now, we don't even have to do that. What we can do is just go through we call into account and ask it for its active accounts, then we can just do that. Now that will give a different order because we're using a set. So 41682. So if order was important, then just a normal set here wouldn't cut it. We didn't need an ordered set, or you can use an array. To be honest, an array would be fine here, because the set is going to be basically implemented in an array anyway at this point. But anyway, that's the point. Is you can maintain order potentially. If you really want. Of course, you know, this you wouldn't do if you really wanted order and that was really important. You wouldn't be sorting it here. You'd keep it pre-sorted. But the point is, because we're using this formulation, we can add in any steps we want. But for now, we just delete that. So really, that's it. You know, it's a single line of code. And it does exactly what we want it to. You know, we can change 1 to false just to demonstrate it works. False. Okay, so we're no longer going to print out 4. There you go. 1, I mean. And that's it. That's quickly converted this account to use under the hood, to use 2 lists, giving us another nice API where we know we're going to go through the active accounts when we process it. So we're just going to do that. And you could even then call this process active accounts. And if you want to do something different for inactive accounts, you can reach in and do something with them. You know, obviously that's going to just print falses, but you see what I mean. Basically, we've separated out, instead of doing an if inside of 4, And again, if you love forIn, you can just do this. Not self, sorry, account. Like that. We'll refresh it like that. So it's very simple. We'll just press play, just make sure. Right, as we see, and this is all the inactives are false. So really, it's not, as I say, it's not whether you use forEach or forIn. That's not relevant. Just don't do this. Just don't put a guard statement as the first thing you do here. Just don't do it. It's not necessary. And if you are doing this, you've gone wrong. You've gone wrong with preparing your data. What am I doing? Else, this is a continue. So this is a redundant. Obviously, this is useless because we've already sorted our accounts. But you know, as soon as you see this for guard or for if in this step, guard immediately on the first line of a for should not be deciding whether you should be inside the for. That's not good coding, and it just isn't. Anyway, that's that. You know, this is a principle of mine, which is like you prepare your data, you get your data in order, make sure your data's right, and then you process it. Don't try to decide whether you should be processing the data within that processing. Get the data that you need to process into a list or into whatever collection type you're going to use, and then process it, and then you can really simplify your code. So that is all. Thanks for listening. Hope that was helpful, and hopefully I'll see you on my next my new series of Lua coding called Level Up Lua. Okay, thank you. Bye.